Hello, MavMind Collective, and welcome to another episode of the HypnoSales Show. Today, we're going to be talking about the secret life of a meeting agenda. So, being a HypnoSales expert, I've learned this concept of a meeting agenda having its own life. In some ways, it has its own secret life. That's how I think of it. Because agendas typically are dictating how you're going to run a meeting. You have agendas to kind of list out the sequence of things you're going to talk about, topics you're going to talk about. And it seems like a simple idea, and every meeting you have typically has one. Typically, not all the time, but everyone does have an expectation somewhat of what the meeting is going to be about and how you're going to progress through the meeting. Now, in a previous video, I talked about the importance of setting the goal and being the goal setter. And you can watch that other video to understand the difference between a goal and a meeting agenda, because agendas have their own life, own secret life. And when I realized this, it changed how I set expectations and how I went about conducting my meetings and how I set my agendas and conducted my agendas before I got the meeting started with all of my customers, clients, and prospects every time. And that the reason I know this is because one day when I was just having a meeting, normal meeting with a client, I laid out my agenda. I asked them if that was okay. They agreed. We went through the meeting, and it ended up being one of the worst meetings I'd ever had. The customer was not responding. They didn't ask any questions. They weren't really interested in anything I was talking about. They wouldn't tell me why. I didn't know how to ask why, because they agreed to my agenda and we progressed through like I thought it was productive. I thought we were making progress, and ended up being we weren't making any progress at all. They had no comments. They had no questions. They wanted to get off the call as soon as possible, and they didn't really even want to follow up and have another meeting. And they ended up disappearing and going dark, as they say, and never heard from them again. And then a couple years later, they resurfaced. And when we engaged with them again, we sort of were like kind of hesitant because they just kind of disappeared. So we weren't really eager to get back on a call with them because they just left us in the dark. But I managed to get them on the call separately just to ask them, so why do you want to reengage? Well, we've been trying these other solutions. We think we need to come back to talk to you, but we just didn't like the way you were running the meeting. And I asked them, well, why not? We agreed to the agenda. Why didn't you tell me? Well, I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know. I didn't want to disrupt what you were doing, but it really wasn't what we wanted, and it kind of turned us all off. So at that moment, I realized that even when they agree to your agenda, they actually have their own agenda, and it's just hidden from you, right? They have what they want to do. It's just hidden from you, and they may not always have the courage to tell you. They may not want to confront you and say, I don't want to do that. I want to do it this other way. I have this other idea in mind for the steps I want to take or what I want to talk about. And so I've now, since that experience, I've considered it, because I think it's at a subconscious level, right? They don't want to say it. Maybe they don't even know that they want to say something. They just think that your agenda looks okay, and they're just assuming, right? It's assumed, which is the other thing that I do, is I'm assuming that they think it's okay, but they are also assuming that when I share my agenda, that I'm probably going to follow it the way they want. And when I take it a different route than they're expecting, they have a horns effect, because the expectation and the experience don't match up. So if you watch my other video, previous video on halos and horns, there's an incongruency happening. So I've realized from that experience that agendas are always hidden until they're revealed. And it's my job in my customer-facing role to always, avoid assuming that my agenda is going to be what they want, even if they accept and agree that my agenda is what they want to do. Don't assume that. Ask them what their agenda is first. Ask them what they want the agenda to be before you even reveal yours. So don't even share your agenda. So this is like the top secret thing I figured out. From a subconscious level, keep your agenda to yourself. Get them to reveal their agenda and discover it. Get them to unhide it. Unhide the agenda. avoid the assumptions. Don't take the risk of sharing your agenda until you know what theirs is. Because if you don't, then you can't respond in the right way. In the respond, there's two ways you can respond. You can either tailor your agenda to theirs, or you can reset the expectations. You can do some resetting of the agenda and the expectations about the agenda if it's something that you're not prepared to do in this meeting. So in other words, if they come up with something that is aligned with yours, you can say, that's not quite what I wanted to do, but here's what I wanted to do, and I'm willing to compromise and align with you, and I'll tailor my response and what I was going to do in this meeting, I'll tailor it to that. Now that you've told me, I'm happy to do that. So in those cases where you can tailor it and get it to be congruent, then you want to do that. And in a lot of cases, their agenda, what they want, is probably exactly aligned with yours. So then you can tailor everything. But if it's not, if there's something along the way when they're revealing their agenda that's not quite what you're expecting, right? Because you were assuming wrong, and now you're avoiding the assumption because they're sharing it, they're unhiding it, and you realize, oh, I'm not prepared to do that. Well, now you can reset their expectation. You can say, well, in this meeting, we're not going to do this, we're going to do something else. And you can use another technique I share in another video called the power permission technique to get them to agree that you're going to follow your agenda. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, Maverick, if it's not what they want to do, and but yet you're trying to get them to do it, isn't that going to create a horns effect and be incongruent? Well, not actually. Actually, it's not, because at the subconscious level, as long as you let it remain subconscious, as long as you let it be in the back of their mind and they're not telling you, and then you are making your assumptions in the back of your mind, that's where it kind of creates friction and is incongruent. But if you reveal it, if you set the expectation or reset the expectation in this case, you're actually making it explicit in the subconscious and the conscious. So then, even if you follow something or do something that they're not really wanting to do, because you get them to agree to it using power permission technique, for this meeting, they agree for this meeting. Maybe you talk about their agenda item in the future meeting when you have time to prepare, but this meeting you're going to do it this way. If they agree, then they're agreeing that the expectation you set is correct. And as long as you deliver that experience and that aligns with it, they'll have a halo effect. So here's what you don't want to do. What you want to avoid doing is getting them to agree to your agenda item, but then still trying to address their agenda item later. Because believe it or not, that'll create an incongruency. They'll say they want to do a thing. You say, I'm not prepared. I have to do this thing. Can you agree with me? They say yes. But then you try to deliver the thing from before. You're just going to confuse them. Don't do that. Avoid that if possible. Tell them what you want, be confident, be a leader in the meeting, and just say, this is what we're going to do, and use the power permission technique to get them to agree, and address their agenda item in another meeting later. But make sure this meeting is congruent all the way through by tailoring or resetting the agenda, and then follow the agenda that you set in that meeting. And then you will deliver the perfect experience for the customer. The most wonderful journey you can bring them on will be totally aligned at all times by doing it like this. Just by understanding that agenda, you have an agenda, they have an agenda, you have to unhide their agenda, you need to avoid assuming, and you need to be able to respond and adjust or reset your agenda accordingly to ensure that the meeting is as perfect of a journey for them as it can be. Thank you for watching. I know you find value in these videos, didn't you? So if you, like me, are in a customer-facing role, I'm wondering if you want to watch another video now designed to help you get better at what you do every day. Or not. You don't have to watch another video if you don't want to.